them and then to allow them to share the incentive with them. So it seems like it's not going to be the final version that we see for consensus algorithms. Okay, so that's a brief overview of what exists now. So what have we done at Penta? We took a long time to research these existing platforms and these existing consensus mechanisms. And we came up with our own mechanism, which is called dynamic state consensus, DSC. Now, the co-founder of Ethereum, Vitalik Buterin, wrote a paper some months ago. He talked about the consensus trilemma. There's three main problems that no existing consensus mechanism has seemed to be able to solve all at once. One problem is security. One problem is scalability, which is the amount of TPS or transactions per second, the throughput you can achieve. And one problem is being decentralized or being democratized. So in existing projects, we can see that you can solve two problems, but you can't solve the third problem. So the question is, how can you solve all three problems at once? We believe that what we've done with DSC is find a way to solve all three problems by balancing the three of them. So we believe that DSC is the most balanced approach to a consensus algorithm. So to give you a brief idea of what we're doing with DSC, there's three layers to it. In the base layer, anybody who's a stakeholder can participate. So it's core to our mission is to be decentralized and to increase the inclusion of the members of our ecosystem. Now on the layer above that, we separate the voting into two categories. One category is for big stakeholders. We call them the delegates. And then we also have witnesses. Now witnesses for us are the smaller stakeholders. So we recognize that in any system you're going to have an imbalance between large stakeholders and small stakeholders. But how do you achieve a democratic voting process given that you have these, that you start with a kind of unequal basis? So we use a randomization algorithm to solve the problem. Now the randomization algorithm is something that we developed ourselves. So it's unique to our platform, it's unique to DSC. So through the randomization algorithm, we do random pairings of the delegates and the witnesses, so big stakeholders and small stakeholders, into many, many small groups. By doing this, we also increase the security because anybody that wanted to launch a potential attack has no idea which of the small groups on the upper layer is going to be involved in the final block where the transactions are validated. So in each of these small groups, you will have big stakeholders and small stakeholders. That guarantees that when the incentive is rewarded to the small group that validates the final block, that it will be shared between big stakeholders and small stakeholders. So we believe that through this process, we have achieved our goal of decentralization. We make sure that there is a very low barrier to access, so anybody can participate, and small stakeholders are guaranteed participation in the final outcome. We also improve on finality because the final layer on the top goes through a Byzantine process to determine the final block. So that requires a 66% consensus between the big stakeholders and the small stakeholders in the small group. And we also achieve greater security through the randomization algorithm. This is going to be increasingly important in this space, especially as we see the advent of quantum computing. So quantum computing is something that we are all paying attention to in the blockchain space. It's specifically with proof of work, it presents problems because the computational power of a quantum computer is many magnitudes higher than existing computation. So that means that it's easy for quantum computers to game the system when it comes to proof of work mechanisms. So anyway, DSC in conclusion is we believe that we have solved the trilemma problem by doing a balanced approach, making sure that we're staying decentralized, also increasing security through the randomization algorithm, and improving scalability through using this proof of stake type mechanism.
Yes. One more question about the consensus mechanism of DSC, because you said that we choose the witness randomly by our algorithm. So how do you fix the problem that some of the nodes or some of the witness doesn't work at that time, or some because people call it a node failing or this kind of situation? How do you solve it?
Yeah, this is a great question. In fact, we've seen projects where they have a limited number of nodes, and if one or two or three of those nodes fail, then the process of validating the transactions might not be able to go forward because they don't have enough people participating in the consensus process, or they lack a quorum. So in our system, because there's so many nodes, in fact, we believe that we can easily achieve over 1,000 nodes participating in the validation process. We're not worried that one or two nodes that either are faulty nodes or have a kind of edging problem, which is the way some people describe these failed nodes, will constitute a problem. Now, another problem that we have to be aware of is that some of these nodes may be bad actors, or may be trying to work against the system, or be working dishonestly during the consensus process. The way that we solve that problem is through the Byzantine fault tolerance layer on the top. The BFT requires that you have a 66%, a two-thirds consensus between the final vote makers in these small groups. So we believe, because it's a totally random process, there's no way to know who's going to be involved in the final voting process, and because the tolerance is so high that it's very highly unlikely that there would be a bad actor able to participate in the final vote.
Understood. Let's talk about the dApps on the Penta network, because as we mentioned in the white paper, that one of the most different parts of Penta is that Penta can support different kind of dApps and will develop different kind of dApps on the Penta network. So what's the core function, or what's the core dApps you want to develop on the Penta network?
So the Penta blockchain is just a base layer protocol. It's an infrastructure. Yes. And on top of the infrastructure, we have to be able to develop applications, in this case decentralized applications, or dApps, that will respond to real-world problems or problems in the real economy. So if you think about, I sometimes explain it this way, blockchain is kind of like your iOS operating system or your Android operating system on your cell phone. It's an operating system, it's also a kind of infrastructure. And on top of that, you have all kinds of application developers developing their apps that you can access through your iPhone or access through your Android. So in the same way, we have the Penta blockchain as a base layer infrastructure. On top of that, you will have application developers developing their decentralized applications. So think about the example I gave of blockchain rice. Maybe in the future, we can also have blockchain baby milk, or blockchain mineral water. And we already know there's true value in this. It won't be Penta who's going out building these applications. We're just providing the infrastructure for these industry partners to come in and build these applications, or these people that want to solve a real-world problem to come in and build the application. So in order to have a successful application layer, and at Penta, we are dedicated to creating a high-performance dApp layer. What does that mean, high performance? Well, you have to have the consensus problem figured out, like we just said, because you imagine that there could be multiple applications running at the same time on your blockchain using the same infrastructure. And you need to use the community to help you validate all those transactions at the same time. So in order to make the system work, you have to have a very, very strong consensus, but you also have to have strong participation from the people in your ecosystem, so they feel that the process is fair and safe. So that's what we believe we are achieving with DSC. Now, in terms of applications, we already have several enterprise partners that we've worked with, either in providing private blockchain solutions to them, or permission blockchain solutions, or in working with them already to develop public blockchain solutions to their whatever their needs are. So what I think is a little bit different about Penta's approach to other projects is that we're kind of engineering in reverse. Instead of just putting our blockchain out there and then growing the ecosystem, we're already growing our ecosystem. We started with an ecosystem, and now we're growing together towards a public blockchain, where they can take advantage of the infrastructure that we will provide through the Penta blockchain.
Okay, that's great. And I think the vision of Penta is really big, and there's a lot of things, there must be a lot of things you plan to do in the 2018 and maybe in the future. So what's our action plan in 2018?
It's true, we have a big vision, and I think yes, all these blockchain projects have a big vision, because we're really talking about transforming the economy. We're talking about a future economy that is based on the sharing economy based on the smart economy. And recently I was in Australia and I heard some young people speaking, people from Generation Z, we say. So these are people who were born after 2000. These are people who are already going off to college now, which is amazing to think. And this young lady said that for people of her generation, they don't think of ownership the way that we do. It's not as important to them that they own a house, that they own a car, because they can do Airbnb, or they can do Uber, or they can do couch surfing. They don't need to necessarily have a cat because they can raise a digital cat online, There's surveys out there that show that young people would prefer to have a digital flower sent to them instead of a real flower. This is a new generation with a different way of thinking. And these are the future consumers, the consumers of tomorrow. So if this is any indication of where the economy is going, it's going to be totally different from where we are today. And in order to propagate that economy, we have to have infrastructure and technology that underpins the system and allows it to flow. So that is the true promise of blockchain. So it is a big vision, but transforming the economy is an even bigger vision. So this is just kind of the kind of cogs and screws underlying the system. We need to have that infrastructure in place. Now, in terms of Penta, how are we achieving this? We have released a technical roadmap that I think is realistic. The first thing that we're doing is our consensus algorithm. Like I said, it's key to make sure that we have that in place so that our application layer can function properly. So we have already released an initial version. Internally, we're conducting testing right now.